This is huge for the New York Islanders as Sportsnet has revealed its top 23 prospects under the age of 23, all who have never played a game in the NHL. And there are two Islanders players on that list. And the second name is definitely going to surprise you. It shocked me. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest and also talk about their last preseason loss against the New Jersey Devils. We're not going to focus on that because there were not that many takeaways of that game. We're going to talk about who stood out, who didn't stand out, because that definitely is a story as well, and also talk about some concerning things about the Islanders early on, but I don't think it's worth focusing too much on. Again, it is an early preseason game. If this continues for the next 3 games, then it definitely is going to be worth talking about more. But with that, let's dive right into this prospect ranking, which really has me excited. Before we do that, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel as we continue to put out Islanders content every single day. Appreciate your support. Now let's look at this list, and as you're probably looking through trying to see who the second Islander name is, obviously the number 1 player on the list and photograph there is Matthew Schaefer, and that really is a no-brainer, especially considering that prospects like Ivan Demidov are not eligible for this list because they have played games in the NHL. Schaefer will be on this list for about a week, and then he'll get taken off because he is definitely playing his first game for the New York Islanders on opening night. But the second Islander player on this list is all the way down at 23, and that is Danny Nelson. And this is a player who really surprised me for being on this list. Definitely would not expect Danny Nelson to be on this list over players like Victor Ekland's, like Cole Eiserman, like Kashawn Aitchison. But it is exciting to see him on this list. Again, Callum Ritchie is not eligible because he has played a game in the NHL, but seeing Danny Nelson get credit along with several players on this list is very exciting. For him to be in this caliber of prospects, listed with players like Oliver Bonk, Cole Hudson, TJ Ginla, those are all players directly ahead of Danny Nelson in this list. Dmitry Shimashev, it's really exciting. And while I will say I don't think Danny Nelson is a top 23 prospect in the NHL, I really think he is a top 75 or maybe even top 50 prospects who did not get enough credit in previous rankings. In all the previous top 100 videos we did this summer, there were 5 Islanders on those lists, and those are what I was considering the big 5 Islanders prospects. Those being Matthew Schaefer, Cole Eiserman, Kashawn Aitchison, Victor Ekland, and Callum Ritchie. Sorry, I almost lost a name there. But those are what I've been talking about as the big 5. And then after that, it's almost always Danny Nelson as number 6, and or sometimes even at number 7, based on where you have Isaiah George. And I do feel like he has been getting underrated. He was the second best Islanders prospect going into the season, and he did nothing to lower his stock. He just got replaced by new players coming in. That being said, I think Danny Nelson is still going to have a big role in the future of the New York Islanders. And reading this description Sportsnet has of Danny Nelson, I think it's pretty accurate. First, you got to note, he still is only 20 years old. He is 6'3", 216 pounds, very big guy. And I really think when it comes to prospect rankings, some people forget about Danny Nelson simply for the fact that he was not drafted in the first round. There always is less attention around players who were not drafted in the first round. Honestly, looking at those lists, there's one player in David Reinbacher who does not really belong on the list at all. This is a guy who's really struggled to stay healthy, has not taken really any steps positively in his development since his draft year. However, because he was drafted 5th overall, he is constantly in these draft rankings. Haven't really seen anything that impressive from him. The same you can say from Nate Danielson from Detroit. Now, I don't think his career has gone sideways the same way that Reinbacher has, but if Danielson was not picked in the top 10 of the NHL, people would not be talking about him all the time. He has not taken these big steps. While on the other hand, I think Danny Nelson has taken some really interesting steps. They're just getting underrated. This write-up says, entering the 3rd year at Notre Dame, Nelson is a jack of all trades. A true 200-foot player, he has got a winning resume with back-to-back World Junior gold medals and a U18 gold too with Team USA. He is currently projected as a second-line scorer, but that's the other details of the game. He draws wins, the matchup abilities, the controlled exits. That should make him an NHL mainstay on Long Island once his college career comes to a close. Now, personally for me, I don't know how much potential Nelson has in terms of moving up the lineup. What I do know, based on watching him, This is an NHL player, and he is going to be a very good NHL player. When this talks about the details are absolutely there for Danny Nelson. He is a player who has a very strong all-around game. He is now going to be playing his third season in Notre Dame. In fact, he is a co-captain of the team, which is really exciting. It also speaks to his leadership abilities. But with Danny Nelson, you were hoping for a big step up in production last season that did not quite happen. I still think it can happen. I'm really not concerned with his lower points. Notre Dame is not the highest scoring team in the that plays college in the Big Ten, and he has a big role beyond just scoring. And those other things are going to translate perfectly into the NHL, especially watching him play in these junior tournaments. I have no doubt that this is going to be an NHL player. Question for me really is he going to be more than a third liner? Because I think a third liner is a pretty solid way to project him. Another thing I do want to mention, the points are not too high with Danny Nelson, but he's another player similar to Callum Ritchie, where I think the way he gets his points translates very well to the NHL, where I think his game is pretty reputable, and you're not going to see this huge drop-off in points when he goes to the NHL. Again, I don't think he's going to be scoring like 60, 70 points a season, unless he takes a huge step up in Notre Dame. Again, this is a player who actually started as a defenseman, so he's still learning how to round up his game as a forward. I think that's why his details are so good as a center. And if all Danny Nelson is a third line center, that is perfectly fine with me, because I think he's exactly the type of third line center you need to win a championship. And I really expect him to play games for the Islanders this season, assuming his season does end early. He just has a lot of tools, and I'm hoping the Islanders sign him so that if next season, if he's not ready for full-time NHL work, he can continue to develop in Bridgeport. Because after a third season college, we'll see where he is, but if he has a big step in point production, I think there's really nothing more he can learn in the college level. Now, we're going to also talk a little bit about this Devils game where the Islanders lost 4-2. Really not going to focus too much on anything happening because it was a bad game. And I will say it was very disappointing that it was a bad game because the Devils were icing their B squad. And the Islanders had Bo Horvat, they had Mathew Barzal, they had a lot of their A-listers playing in this game, which is concerning, especially when you consider the top two lines were not really generating any offense at all. When you think about the previous game the Islanders played against the Devils, where the Devils played their main players, they were absolutely dominating the Islanders AHLers. Callum Ritchie was the only player who could get it out of the zone. In this game, these players really had no trouble stopping the Islanders' top players. In fact, a lot of times, the Islanders' top two forward lines were not able to generate any offense, which is a genuine concern because it seems like early on the chemistry between Drouin, Horvat, and Shabanov is not there. And the chemistry between Barzal and Duclair, while it was good to see Duclair play, and I will say he did have some burst of speed, that was an encouraging sign. But the chemistry there does not seem to be that great either. Didn't look that great in the previous game where Mathew Barzal played with Anders Lee. I'm concerned about the top six of the Islanders when Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal are not playing together. And in fact, in this game, third period, Patrick Waugh actually decided to put them together, which might be an encouraging sign if we're hoping, which we are, hoping for Callum Ritchie to make this team. One thing I did not really think of until this game is if the offense does not work, if this whole experiment of separating Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal is a disaster and the Islanders can't score a goal, pretty quickly, Patrick Waugh is going to put them back together, and then perhaps Callum Ritchie has a chance to contend for the second line position. We've already talked about until JG Pageau gets traded. We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's episode of Islanders Digest, but until that happens, it's going to be hard for Callum Ritchie to get a spot on this team. If Mathew Barzal and Bo Horvat have to play together, that is a perfect window for him to make the club and potentially add secondary offense, because so far, a lot of these wingers they have just are not showing the part. I think Paul Mary has looked pretty good in the preseason, and that's it. Now, Shabanov in this game, he looked okay. I think people are hating on him too much. What I did like is all the little defensive things that you need him to do to stay in the NHL, those are in his game. He is able to do that, and he's able to keep a play going. It was hard to really tell if it was his fault that plays were not working or Drouin was just on another planet. So far, I am not impressed with Drouin, and it's early. He is an NHL veteran, so I'm not too concerned yet. But so far, it's not looking like we're going to get the same Drouin that the Avalanche got, at least from these initial preseason games. Shabanov still, he's not lighting things up the way you want to see. Though I will point out, he is still getting used to North American ice. I'm not concerned just because the defense is there and it's going to give him time to figure out more of that offensive game. We know it's there, it's not quite showing. There are still small signs here and there. I thought this game was a lot less optimistic than last game, but I think he's still thinking a lot. And once he gets a feel for the game, it's going to be much better. Also, I think it might be a good idea to at least try him on Barzal's wing instead. I don't think Horvat is quite a fit. I can't really tell if it's Horvat's fault or just Drouin on his line just not doing any favors. Again, really not impressed with Drouin at all. Bright side of this game, again, was Mathew Schaefer. Schaefer is absolutely ready for the NHL. Really cool in this game to see him play a little more physical, really show off more of that side, that he is ready to play physically at an NHL level. He had some turnovers that people were blowing up online. I really did not find those to be a concern at all. And now the Islanders are really starting to cut down training camp, and it's notable that Schaefer obviously is still up. Isaiah George is still up. And for those who are really rooting for him, Callum Ritchie is still up. And I think after that game, he has a legitimate chance because Callum Ritchie has been producing all preseason, and I don't think you can say that about any other player on the Islanders roster, except for Matt Barzal and, of course, Mathew Schaefer. As we were talking about before, Mathew Schaefer is making mistakes, but again, he had another assist in this game, and when he has the puck, he just adds another element of offense to his game. Do want to quickly note before we get into one quote that I was really excited about. Liam Foudy, Julien Gauthier have both been sent down to Bridgeport. They have to clear waivers and then they will be loans. Some other players have also been sent down. As we can see, any player who is not on this list has been sent down. We're not going to go through every single player. I just noted Liam Foudy and Julien Gauthier because they have played NHL games in the past. Don't think they're going to be claimed. I think people always think players are going to be claimed. You got to keep in mind, every single team is sending players down at the same time. Unless you have a guy whose name really pops, not going to be sent down. The one player who, if Callum Ritchie does make the team, is going to have to pass waivers, who I don't think will, is if either Gatcomb or Kyle McLean gets sent down. I think there's a 50-50 chance somebody takes, especially McLean, not even because he's a good center, but with centers in such high demand, I can see McLean getting claimed. I can maybe see Gatcomb getting claimed, and that's pretty much about it when it comes to other players and whether or not they would be claimed. There are also some players here who are injured. You can't send a player down while they're injured. Ethan Bear is another player that I wonder if perhaps would get claimed. Right-hand defensemen are in short demand, but with him not being fully healthy, I really wonder if that's going to change things. Or maybe it makes it more likely that he's going to get claimed because this would be a perfect time to send him down, but since you have to wait until he's no longer injured, I wonder if that will put him available at a time that he is more vulnerable to a waiver claim. Now, finally, we have a quote from Duclair on Schaefer, and I want to include this quote because, again, I thought Duclair actually played a good game. He had the goal that was assisted by Schaefer, and he also had a few quick steps, which you could not say for all of last season after he got hurt. He wasn't back to what he was in those first 5 games that really excited me, but he looked closer to that than what he was last season. I'm really hoping, at the very least, we can get 35 to 40 points out of this player to really make that contract worthwhile and give the Islanders some much-needed production. Because, again, a lot of the wingers have been absolutely abysmal. Duclair did not look great, but he looks better than abysmal, which is a positive. And he said on Mathew Schaefer, it's like having a fourth forward out there at times. I love when he jumps on the rush and makes those incredible cross passes. His vision is incredible. We're really lucky to have him. And I really agree with that, where it feels like when Schaefer's on the ice, the Islanders have an extra leg of offensive attack. In fact, when Schaefer's on the ice, those are the only times where it seems like the Islanders get any offense. And I will also compliment him. While he did make one turnover, had some bad rushes where he just could not keep the puck in the zone or really get in the perfect position, I will note, at no time is Schaefer coming up on the play really costing the Islanders anything defensively. He's really good at picking his moments, which is something that really excites me with a younger player. A lot of times, these younger offensive defensemen, they hesitate a little bit when it comes to choosing their moments. Clearly, Schaefer is decisive and he decides well, which is very encouraging for Islander fans because it's really looking like he is going to be a really strong two-way defenseman for a very long time. One that has a lot more of an offensive punch than I think a lot of scouts thought. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of Danny Nelson as a prospect. Where would you rank him in the Islanders pool? And what did you think of that preseason game? Was there anyone that I didn't mention that you thought stood out? I think Warren was also good. But other than that, just not a lot of good showing for the Islanders, really in general, for this preseason. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you in the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.